Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, December 11th. MLS season is officially over. 2-1 winners, Columbus Crew over LAFC in MLS Cup. Maybe we'll talk about our thoughts a little bit about that game a little bit later. We're certainly going to get there. The big thing everybody, I'm sure, is waiting is General Manager Will Kuntz will be joining us in about 8 minutes or so. So we're excited to have him on. That'll be fun. But we got a lot of other stuff, rumors in this. We want to talk about Don Garber's sort of State of the League speech that was in there as well. There's some LA Galaxy news with the trade window open. All sorts of fun stuff is around. And we are ready to talk about it all. And to help me do it, we're glad to have him back. It's Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
Hey, you know what? It's going to be great to have Will Kuntz here, but I'm not sure why the Galaxy hired him. I mean, Greg Vanney signed one of the greatest kickers of all time.
We were just talking about this, and I did not put two and two together. I knew that it was a former Toronto or a Toronto draftee that had not stayed in MLS and had gone to the NFL and now was the kicker for the Dallas Cowboys. I did not realize it was Greg Vanney who drafted him. So he does have an eye for talent. That's what you know.
Yeah, his name is Brandon Aubrey. Greg Vanney drafted him number 1 in 2017 in Toronto. He never really played much in Toronto. And apparently he was watching TV with somebody several years ago, and they watched somebody miss a place kick, and the person Brandon Aubrey was watching TV with said, you could do that. And so he decided to try, tackle football. And he signed with the Cowboys in July. He's now 30 for 30 on field goals. He missed his very first kick of his NFL career. He missed an extra point against the Giants.
Okay.
But he's 30 for 30 from field goals. And this week against the Philadelphia Eagles, he made a 59-yarder and a 60-yarder. First player ever to make 2 field goals of 59 yards or more in the same game. And apparently the 60-yard field goal actually landed in the net behind the goalpost. You know, that's like another 5 or 10 yards.
He's
still
got
legit,
some room.
and
He's got
room. Greg Vanney to thank for all this.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that? Yeah, I mean, an interesting story for sure. I want to say, did you travel to Columbus? Did you not? So you were there
I did.
And back. So how was the trip?
Boy,
overall?
my arms tired. Huh? And what was that?
I said, how was the trip overall? What did you enjoy?
It was the trip there was terrible because to get to Columbus is one of the things I told MLS afterwards. I said, from now on, let's hold these MLS Cup finals in real towns. It was very hard to get to Columbus. Had to go from Burbank to Denver, and then the plane broke.
Right.
So had to get another plane. And then after waiting several hours for another flight, then it was Denver to O'Hare, then from O'Hare to Columbus. Finally got there after midnight. Coming home was a little bit better. But and Cincinnati would have been bad too. Cincinnati would have taken a couple of transfers.
It's not a real town either. You're out on the Midwest. I can tell you're not going to be invited back to a lot of these places.
Well, you know what? If you go to Cincinnati, if you've never been there, you don't even go to Cincinnati. You fly into Covington, Kentucky. But having said all that, actually, this is my 7th trip, I think, to Cleveland for soccer. It's actually a pretty cool town. The downtown area.
Columbus or Cleveland?
Columbus.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Columbus, yeah. The downtown area around Columbus is really, it's historic. It's really nice. I had a great time walking along the river and doing some things there. And it was one of those things I was talking to somebody about, this job being a sports writer. And I thought, I really enjoyed Columbus. It's a great city. And I said, I've been there 7 times. It's not a city I would ever have gone to if it wasn't for work.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cities I think I've been to. Cincinnati is another one that I probably wouldn't have gone to if not for work, that I liked. But St. Louis, maybe I would have gone there for something else. But Columbus it's really a great city, and the atmosphere around the Crew. They have a AAA baseball team, the Columbus Clippers. They draw pretty well. They have the Blue Jackets in hockey,
right?
But and of course the Ohio State Universities. It is a sports town. They just don't have a lot of professional teams, and they've really come out and adopted the Crew.
That's fun. Well, it was an interesting game to watch for sure. Columbus played so well. That's just, talk about a turnaround with Columbus, and they get rid of Caleb Porter. They bring in Wilfred Nancy. There's always these guys, and that's a guy who I never thought would, you hear his name in Montreal, and he was, at least in my mind, an unknown sort of guy. You didn't know a lot about him. Has a ton of success with Montreal, leaves there, goes to Columbus, wins an MLS Cup. He turns things around. He gets things pointed in the right direction. Not that Columbus was a bad team last year, but they weren't the way that they played in that final was outstanding soccer. Some really, really outstanding soccer, and it was fun to watch.
The atmosphere there, they have the building's about 20,000, a little over. They sold out, of course. There were 1,700 LAFC fans there. They made a lot of noise, so the Crew fans tried to make their noise back. The atmosphere was amazing. It rained through the whole game.
Yeah, I saw that.
It didn't appear to really affect play, but the atmosphere, the sound level was higher than anything I think I've ever heard. That the building, for one, really holds the sound.
That's cool,
which helps.
Yeah, it looks like a gorgeous stadium. It's on the list of places to go just so I can go to that stadium. But glad you were there, and obviously we can talk about it a little more. Let's get to a little bit of LA Galaxy news, because right after we had a podcast last Monday, the LA Galaxy made an announcement. They announced that they were promoting LA Galaxy's Will Kuntz to general manager, right? So basically going from a subordinate to Greg Vanney to now being the chief soccer officer, or the top of the pyramid on the soccer side of operations, right?
We should get him on the show and talk to him.
That's a great idea. It would have been better if you said that in 2 minutes, and then we could have just connected him like that. But we're gonna have him on the show, which is fun. We've been trying to have him on the show actually for a couple weeks. I'm glad. Who knows? Maybe sometimes it's like they know that they shouldn't come on the show right whenever they do, and then they're waiting for something else. But some really interesting stuff going on with the Galaxy, and a very smart guy came highly touted. New York Yankees organization, Major League Soccer, LAFC, and now LA Galaxy, and all these things that are sort of coming around. It's funny because everybody says let Will Kuntz cook, right? Everybody's like let him cook, let him do his thing. And I wanted to come up with a segment that was sort of like cooking with Kuntz, right? That's what it should be. And so maybe that's what we'll title the segment here whenever he comes on. But we're super excited to have him on. Kevin, it feels like it wasn't a surprise. I didn't know it was happening. I don't think you knew it was happening in terms of that they were going to make that announcement. But it didn't really seem a surprise. But you have to wait, because he's probably a very prompt person, right? And so I'm pretty excited if we can get him on here and everything works.
I didn't think it was a surprise either. I kind of thought when he came in that was always going to be his position. Now, maybe there were contractual issues.
Right.
Maybe there's just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic,
right,
and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that had to happen, but you don't bring a guy like Will Kuntz in and say, "Yeah, you're to sit over there."
All right,
he's going to run the show.
Well, let's ask him. Everybody, welcome back to the show. We've had him on once before. We're glad to have him on again here in the preseason that leads up. Newly appointed or freshly minted general manager for the LA Galaxy, Mr. Will Kuntz. Will, are you there?
Gentlemen, how we doing?
We're doing excellent, thank you. Kevin's arms are tired coming back from MLS Cup, but other than that, everything else seems pretty good.
Well, he said, "Gentlemen," he must be on the wrong show.
He didn't know you were going to be here.
Hey, I heard you got out of baby duties tonight and you came over with the infants over here. It's kind of the same thing. We don't cry as much, but it's kind of the same thing.
Listen, no offense, I'll take my daughter over both of you guys every day of the week and twice on Tuesday. But luckily, my mother-in-law is in town. We've got a 50-person party this Saturday for her second birthday, so there's a lot going on.
Wow. Awesome. Big things going on. Well, we're glad you could take a little bit of time and come on the show. Let's talk about this promotion. When you joined the LA Galaxy in the position that you were, I think there was a lot of speculation that perhaps that wasn't the position that you would end up with. Was this in the cards always? Was this a possibility always? Or did you come over to the LA Galaxy with sort of the hope that perhaps you could be that top of the pyramid guy there as general manager?
It certainly was not in the cards or sort of in the offing when I came over. I joined the Galaxy because I always kind of had a dream of being a part of the club. And, when you look at the landscape of MLS clubs, just the opportunity to be a part of the club and help kind of bring it back to greatness, I think was quite frankly more appealing than a lot of maybe better opportunities at other clubs. So, you always kind of hope that if you can kind of come in and do good work and be a part of something special, that gets rewarded. But, it was always kind of the plan to say, hey, I'm going to come and help us do good work. So, certainly humbling, flattering, honoring to be given the opportunity, but I think it's exceeding my kind of 99th percentile for what I might have hoped.
I was going to ask, you reported to Greg Vanney when this started, and now he reports to you. Is that a weird situation? Does sports make that situation more common than maybe just the general business world?
No, I don't think so. In a lot of ways, sports make it a little bit easier. The bulk of the pressure that we face comes from outside, right? So, and that's the nature of being part of a team of professional sports, right? You have to be a strong unit internally because, everybody is looking to come at you from outside. And so it's almost like being in a submarine, right? Like you have to make sure that the internal pressure can meet the external pressure. And, it really doesn't change the way we work. It doesn't change the way we make decisions. It doesn't change our player profiles or how we go about trying to put together a winning club.
Kevin, you have a question? I'll shoot it over to you.
Yeah, we saw this weekend Wilfred Nancy became the first Black manager to win an MLS Cup. That should have happened a long time ago. It didn't. It did happen this weekend. And my understanding is your promotion makes you the only Black general manager in the league, and one of the very few executives at the general manager, owner level or above. Is that important to you? Is that a milestone that we need to be talking about?
No, listen, I'm not the first, right? And we've had sporting directors like Dennis Hamlet and Ali Curtis in the league, and they've been very successful at different clubs. I think one of the great things about MLS is the effort that they put into promoting, not just people of color, but people from underrepresented groups, and giving them a platform, right? I think, it's really about, hey, who is the best that we can get, irrespective of sort of race, color, or creed, right? And we're just looking for people who can do the job. And I think that's a massive advantage that we hold here in this country and in this league, right? And so I'm super thrilled for Wilfried and, just the way that team played and the way that team rallied around him. And you can see just the impact that he has on his players. And I hope it spurs more clubs and ownership groups to look at sort of all corners of the earth for where we're going to find good people, right? Because you look at the best soccer teams around the world, and they are reflective of people who come from very different backgrounds, right? And I don't know why that would apply solely to a player pool. So I think it's a really great moment. It's something I'm very proud of. If I'm being honest, we got even fewer biracial general managers and executives than purely Black and purely white. And so I think that's also something I'm very proud of, right? Like a mixed heritage. And I think it's a really exciting time for the league, and I'm excited about what's to come.
It was looking at your vision for the Galaxy now. How does that differ maybe from the first 3 years that we've seen under Greg Vanney? Is there going to be a lot of change? Do you have a sort of a different view of how you like to put teams together?
No, part of the reason that I came to the Galaxy was Greg's vision for, how he wants to play and what he believes a good roster to be. And, there's a lot of crossover there, because when I first joined the league office in 2014, I took Tim Bezbatchenko's role at the league office when he went to go work for Toronto FC. And I learned a lot from Tim in that first year. And when I'd go to visit, Toronto, there was this academy, Ryan Nielsen was the first team coach, but then there was this academy director, Greg Vanny, who was really, kind of attached at the hip with Tim. And so I got to spend a good chunk of time in that weekend up in Toronto with not just Tim, but also Greg. And then, God, I want to say fast forward to 2019, at my old place, we had a Supporter Shield winning team, and we were kind of crushing everybody, and we got absolutely handled by Toronto, right? I'll never forget. I mean, we thought we were really hot stuff, and they really bodied us. And it's sort of 5-6 years later, you're like, hey, here's this guy again, whose squad has just put together probably the most comprehensive performance against us that we've seen. And then in this offseason, when you're sitting back and looking at what my options kind of were, and Greg's vision and the way he, saw, the way he sees the game, the way he thought about players, quite frankly, the work that he did, and I don't think this gets enough credit, right? I mean, if you think about where the Galaxy were when he kind of took over, and it's almost like that, the 10% of the iceberg is what we see, but the 90% under the surface is sort of what nobody sees. But building a dedicated video room, right? So the team can have a place to meet, before training and talk tactics and watch video, streamlining the offices downstairs, just trying to bring in and expand, whether it's the high performance, sports science departments, if it's, building out a cognitive department, infrastructure. I mean, he was really monumental in doing a whole lot of stuff that people sort of on the sidelines don't really get to see, right? And so I knew that there was already this groundswell of work and effort to put in. And, I have a very niche skill set, I think, in this league, which is, trying to manage the quite frankly Byzantine rules and inscrutable rules of the league. And I was just like, hey, I think I can help, be a part of what you're trying to do. And that was really exciting to me. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that, I am a believer in what Greg is trying to do. And I've seen firsthand, how it can have success.
Do you think when you're looking at the LA Galaxy contracts and you're looking at the roster, and by my count, I have 20. I don't know how many you have on your roster, but we'll go with mine for now. I have 20 players. You have 10 spots basically open. How do you feel the Galaxy are contract-wise? How do you feel their flexibility-wise? Obviously, there was a move today with Raheem Edwards and moving him to Montreal. You guys got $400,000 in general allocation money coming back, but when you look at his salary plus that, maybe $700,000 plus swing on salary and everything that goes with that, how do you feel the Galaxy are sort of contract-wise, and is there flexibility on this stuff?
At the moment, things are fairly tight. And this time of year is always very fluid, right? Like the trade window opened up this morning and we saw a flurry of activity. A lot of these things were kind of pre-baked, but we had CSO meetings last week in Phoenix, and guys get to talking around the table, and we'll have the re-entry draft later this week. Then free agency opens up, and so there's a lot of moving parts. And so what that kind of means in practice is that you might think, hey, this is what we've got, or we're really set here, or we're really stretched thin here, and all of a sudden tomorrow, the phone rings and it's a conversation that you didn't think you might be having, right? And you have to be kind of willing to adjust. And so I think, we have a lot of good pieces on our roster. I think we've got some room to add the kind of big ticket items or big ticket players that I think we need to fill out the depth chart. But we have to evaluate all potential options, and you never really know what's going to come up until that phone rings.
Right. Kevin, do you want to jump in, or should I just keep
hammering? No, I got one question. You had told me when you first came over that you envisioned the idea of maybe trying to find some exciting young players in maybe untapped markets, maybe not just go back to the sort of the European well, but look for other places. At your old club, LAFC's had success going to Colombia, at Tuesta and Arango, and going to, Uruguay, Diego Rossi. You look at Seattle, they went to, Peru and got Rui Diaz. I'm wondering, do you have some maybe untapped markets that you're looking at, places that you think players in MLS have traditionally not come out of that you would like to go try to find some players?
Yeah, it's tough for me to call like Colombia an untapped market, or Uruguay an untapped market.
Not a ton of the players have come to LA, MLS, especially to the Galaxy. It seems like the Galaxy's traditional place they've gone has been Europe, whether it's France or England or wherever. They're, until Guillermo Barrascolotto came in, they seemed to ignore Latin America to a large extent, and the rest of the league was going and getting young players there. As you said, the whole world is out there. We can go get players from anywhere. It's an international game.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of answer it in two parts, right? One, I think the most important thing, maybe three parts. The history of this league is such that you really have to get your DPs right. I don't know that there's been a hyper successful team, whether that's Supporters Shield winner or MLS Cup winner, that hasn't had, real contributions from its designated players, right? So I think that's kind of the golden rule of MLS. And then the second piece of that is you kind of have to have your DPs on the field as much as possible to maximize them, right? And with that, you kind of, younger players are a much better bet to have to be on the field and to be available. And our league does present unique challenges, right? Between the summer schedule, the amount of travel. I'm not sure if you've ever seen when they overlay the map of the US and MLS travel over Europe, right? And when you go from LA to play Orlando, for example, it's like flying from Barcelona to northwestern Iraq, right? It's hard, right? And now we've got Leagues Cup, and that's, that sort of squeezes games out into the kind of the first part and the latter part of the calendar, right? So you have these, you play through the summer, you play through the heat. I'll never forget when we went to Nashville with Giorgio Chiellini and Gareth Bale, and they walked onto the field, and it was probably about 5:00, but they were just like, this is insane. Why would you play in this, right? And it was probably 90 degrees and 70% humidity, and they were like, this is gross. It's a different league. It's really physically taxing in a lot of different ways. And so I think you kind of put yourself in a really good position if you have, guys who are closer to their prime or in their prime available. And then, with that, it's kind of a personal thought on it, but my general sort of rule of thumb is for those in their prime, right? The closer you are to London, kind of the less likely it is that you're going to want to move to MLS, because the most money is in Europe, the best clubs are in Europe, the biggest games, with all due respect to CONCACAF Champions or the Asian Champions League, UEFA Champions League is the gold standard. So you're probably going to have a hard time trying to get younger players, in the top flights of Europe. And so, different markets in other parts of the world are sort of naturally, I wouldn't say more attractive, but more viable, right? If you're kind of looking to hit, that kind of trifecta of DPs who can be on the field and are realistic options.
All right, it's my turn. I got rumors to ask you about, so we can go yes, no, however you want to answer them. But I want to at least clear the air on some of these if we can.
Okay.
All right, and again, you tell me what you can tell me.
The spider sense is tingling right now.
I know. You're already excited about this part. Chucky Lozano was rumored to the LA Galaxy. Any truth behind that?
It is true that he was rumored to the Galaxy, yes.
and would you see him joining us here soon?
I would be very surprised if PSV Eindhoven spent the money that they did with the thought that they would move him somewhere else.
Excellent. All right. Murata was again rumored to the LA Galaxy. Should we expecting him in the Shield here soon? No,
Alvaro was there was sort of mutual interest at some point, and again, when you look at a player of his stature, you have to take a meeting, right? Or you have to kind of explore that and what that could mean to have a guy who's been productive for such a long time at so many top clubs and is part of such a massive national team setup.
Yep, absolutely. Alexandre Lacazette.
We're really replaying the hits of Reddit from last month.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Yeah, similar. Similar type of situation when goals are probably the most valuable thing that any one player can bring. Right. If you look at the math historically across leagues, every goal that you score is worth about a point in the standings. And so, a proven goal scorer like that, you sort of have to do your due diligence.
Okay. Very, very good. Appreciate that. How about a recent one then? If we, those ones were for, like you said, over the last, 30 days, something like that. This one over the weekend, Miki Yamane, Japanese 29-year-old right back. Any interest in him from the LA Galaxy?
Yeah, definitely. Miki and Maya Yoshida know each other very well. With Lucas Caligari suffering an injury, we weren't able to exercise his permanent transfer option, which leaves us with a pretty sizable hole at right back. And then, Kelvin Leerdam coming out of contract. So, Miki is a guy that, we have had conversations. I went over to watch him this past weekend in Tokyo in the Emperor's Cup final. So not done by any means, but I would say there's probably some fire beneath that smoke.
Very good. Any jet lag from going to Japan and back?
Honestly, I spent more time in the air than I did in Tokyo.
Right.
And it's actually a little bit easier to get there. The last time I went to Tokyo was from New York, and so that's a whole different proposition.
Gotcha.
You talked about, when I asked you about Colombia, you talked about that's not really an untapped market. We could talk about that, whether it has been for MLS or not. Juan Pablo Angel and others have played here, but there's only been 12 Japanese. Might this be one of those places you're talking about where maybe you would go in, and because there isn't a history of a lot of scouting there, that maybe you might find somebody there that's very valuable that might have been overlooked by other teams in the league or weren't on their radar?
Listen, with the caveat that I love me some me, right, to quote Terrell Owens, and it may be untapped by sort of MLS. If you look at some of the top clubs in Europe, I mean, they are they are having a ton of success, bringing players out of Japan, right? I mean, you look at, Celtic in Scotland, they've got two fantastic players. Brighton, I mean, like they're sort of everywhere. So Europe is way ahead of the game, or way beyond MLS with respect to the Japanese market. I think it's a great market for players. I think their development system is fantastic. They, in a lot of ways, they've found a great way of kind of combining the university, like using college as a player development tool, in a way that, quite frankly, we haven't been able to here in the States. And so I think that, you get players who are just a little more polished, maybe a little older when they make their first move, but there's, a tremendous talent pool, tremendous infrastructure and player development there. And, you're getting players who really are committed and organized and disciplined, not to sort of paint it with a broad brush, but they're, when you look at that player development system and the way they have figured it out as a nation, it's very sort of understandable that top players are coming out. But I don't think, there's a difference between being kind of best in class in MLS with respect to kind of scouting them in Japan and being best in class in the world, right? And we are a good shout behind the best clubs in that regard.
Well, let me, I know we're coming kind of close to the end of your time, but if Josh will let me ask one more quick question. We when you talk about those rumors, as you said, the best hits of Reddit, and this is something I think Josh and I sort of have come to accept with the Galaxy, is that any player that's ever going to, leave his club is always rumored to be coming to the Galaxy. And I think that's due to the part that a lot of agents and fans in Europe know the Galaxy. I mean, that's the MLS club that they know. And so if you're trying to plant a rumor, you say the Galaxy. But I'm wondering, you hear all these rumors about players coming and that you're probably not really interested in or haven't talked to. Does that noise create problems for you? Because I'm thinking the fans look at that and say, oh, we're getting Chucky Lozano. This is so awesome. And then he doesn't come. And then is there a disappointment factor? Did you have to keep your head down and just ignore that? And are you worried that maybe the fans are going to say, you didn't get Chucky Lozano, you failed, when in fact you were never really even talking to him?
I'm probably a little more low key online than I need to be. But one thing you see is, like, if it's, hey, Chucky Lozano, you get 50% of people being like, hell yeah, it's Chucky, let's go. And you get 50% of people being like, this is just the Galaxy playing the hits, right? Mexican superstar. And you could do that with Morata, right? You could do that with Lacazette. It's kind of, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and everybody sees what they want to see. And so, I don't think you can kind of get pulled in any one direction by the conversation, because it's always sort of split 50-50 between people who think it's great and people who think it's terrible. And honestly, if we're doing our job right, and 50% of people are upset with the move, like, I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, not wrong. You're trying to thread the needle there. That's a pretty hard one to do. I'll close up. I think I have a couple more tough ones. We'll close on an easy one. Billy Sharp has come out in the media and talked about Greg Vanney sort of going dark on him, or maybe promised him that he was supposed to say, and then Billy Sharp ends up not coming back to the Galaxy. Was that a change in vision between you and Greg for Sharp? Are you the guy who was supposed to call Billy Sharp? How do you see that from your side?
I'm sorry, this is the easy question?
No, I said the easy question at the end. I said hard questions, then easy question at the end.
Listen, there's a lot to the situation, and one of the things I would say is that, like, it kind of speaks to how, I referenced this earlier, but how different MLS is, right? Billy and Greg met for an hour, after the season was over, and Billy, kind of grabbed me afterwards, and when you think about what it means to be, coming out of contract or having an option in MLS, and with the timing of everything and what that might mean, there's the, hey, like, we'd like to have you back, but we don't know if it'll work. But you're not going to know if something might work until 4, 6, 8 weeks down the line, right? And in Europe, it's very easy to sort of, you get an answer right away, like, is it a yes or a no, right? And here it's a little more nuanced, right? It's like, well, we may not be able to pick up your option, but to have you back, this is what it would look like, right? And so I think there's an aspect of it where we certainly could have communicated what the time frame might be, all right? And I think part of the issue is that if you don't have that context of when somebody's going to know if there's going to be salary cap space or something like that, you might think, all right, well, I'm going to be back in, I'm going to go away and I'll be back in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that. And it's like, hey, like, because we're not picking up your option and you've got a visa, it might not be the best idea to leave your stuff here and plan to get it back, right? So, it is something I think we probably could have handled with a little more communication, and I did reach out to Billy, the day before he left, the night before he left, and just said, hey, listen, man, I really want to thank you. You moved your family halfway across the world on short notice. I was kind of joking with him. I said, I wish you would have scored a few more goals, right? Maybe easier to keep you. But his connection with the fan, he was nothing but professional, and he came into a club that was in a very difficult moment. And so, we all thought it was important that he hear that from somebody at the club. Greg was on a trip in England at the time, so he was really busy. And it's also, this is part of the reason I think we had a split of responsibilities, right? It's really hard to do both jobs, right? You're a head coach and you're handling these players in their end of year sort of technical assessments and trying to review the year with them and lay out a technical plan going forward. And you're also wearing the sporting director hat, where you've got to deal with contracts and options and renegotiations and salary cap, and they are two all-consuming full-time jobs that were rolled up into one. And again, it's not like Greg just said, "Hey, Billy, thanks a lot, see you later," right? There was a long conversation, and then I think a big issue was in the follow-up,
right?
But again, it's not like it was all on Greg or all on myself, or there was never any kind of conversation. But again, I do think we could have done a few things differently in how we communicated, and it's certainly what my college coach would call a teachable moment, right? So it gives us the opportunity to adjust and maybe formalize some things, and remember that, hey, you could be a 15, 20-year veteran, right, who scored all the goals and then some abroad, but you still don't know how this crazy league works over here, right?
Right.
And unless you've been here for a long time, it's going to be like nothing you've ever experienced, right? And just having that frame, it's a good reminder that we got to make sure that we educate everybody, because when you come to MLS for the first time, even if you're a 20-year vet, you're still a rookie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can see that. I think the other follow-up is sort of looking at Tyler Boyd. Again, this is part of the hard questions, not the fun question yet. But the Tyler Boyd, obviously in a interesting situation just in terms of the contract and MLS and everything else. And I'm sure you've had many conversations with Tyler and also just how MLS works. This league makes it difficult to sort of hold on to guys for any amount of time. But where do you guys stand with Tyler Boyd? Is there a chance that he comes back to the LA Galaxy?
Yeah, we are actively working on bringing Tyler back. We're in regular communication with his agent. Again, it's he has earned the right to sort of see what his options might be, right, within our again crazy framework of a league and its rules. But we would certainly like to have Tyler back and are working towards that end.
Very good. All right, so here's my fun question. We'll let you get out of here. Because that jet lag coming back from I guess east to west, but in the opposite direction, that's weird. It's an international dateline thing that screws me up every time.
Yeah, I left on Sunday morning and I got back on Saturday afternoon.
Wonderful. You time traveled. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But what are you most looking forward to this season? What gets you excited? Is it this part of the season that is conceptual in a lot of ways, planning, trying to figure and slot guys into different little areas that you have, trying to sort of plan the vision, or will you be happiest when the first game gets played or the 12th game gets played?
I think what I'm most looking forward to is that first week of preseason, right? When we bring this new group in, we don't have, I think a lot of the weight and baggage that we had, certainly at the start of last year, and I wasn't even here at the start of last year, but if you rewind 12 months ago, there was just a lot going on with the club. And I came in March and it was wearing on everybody, right? But I think the chance to just really reset, have some new faces, have some familiar faces, just getting, and kind of coming together as a team, right? Like just getting down to doing the work. I think that's the most exciting part, right? And kind of figuring out what kind of team we're going to be, what kind of group this is, who's going to be, who are going to be the leaders that step up, who are going to be the guys that, you got to make sure you don't fall asleep on the bus or the plane because they're going to mess with you.
Right.
Like learning about the team, I think is the most exciting part. So this part of the off season is fun. It's a bit of a high wire act. I've really liked working with, El Tigre Karosky and Mikey Stevens and Gordon Kleshton and Joe Jasso in the front office, right? Like we've got, I think, a really good group, and we've done some really good work as far as identifying targets and our plan of attack and getting them in. But once you get them in, it's like, all right, now we're kind of all champing at the bit and just waiting to see what it looks like. And so that kind of transition from guys coming in, helping the new guys acclimate, watching the guys who've been here kind of step up a little bit, and then as the actual team comes together on the field, and then knowing that Greg and the coaching staff don't have to worry about touch wood, right? I mean, I'm sure the Kuntz out hashtags will come by July, but we're at least starting, I think, with some better vibes, right? And that just goes such a long way. And even going behind the scenes a little bit, I was in a meeting today, a budget meeting with some different heads across the organization. I think there's some really cool stuff planned for the building in 2024, right? Some things that'll make maybe game presentation feel a little bit fresher, right? Have people kind of walking in and say, hey, this feels a little different, right? So, hopefully it looks different on the field, and kind of more in line with what I think, Greg's traditional vision has been, but I think also in the stands, right? And
Right.
Sort of as you walk around the building and say, hey, like that's new or that's different or check that out. I think that speaks to the fact that this is not just, it's not just an organization that's the first team. It's sort of across the entire Galaxy, front office, right? The Galaxy organization. Some really cool stuff in the works that I'm excited I'm excited to see people see when they walk into the building.
If Jovan is Il Tigre, what's your spirit animal?
I don't know. We haven't gotten that far yet, right? But there's only one Tigre, and it is certainly Johan.
Yeah, we'll workshop that for you.
That for
no,
you.
Not a problem. Free of charge.
Listen, we can't force it, right? It's got to come naturally.
Organic.
We were going to call your. I didn't tell you this yet, but whenever you're on here routinely, we're going to call this segment "Cooking with Kuntz." So that's something that I think has been branded already.
The chef. Call him the chef.
Yeah, we'll call you the chef from here from now on, I guess. The whole deal. I will say, good for you. The price of avgas is actually pretty high right now. So the chance of them getting an airplane by July and having your name with Kuntz out on it is probably pretty low right now, unless they're already starting to save. So. You have that.
I have learned not to underestimate the passionate Galaxy fans. Right? So, if they can perceive it, they can achieve it.
That's absolutely 100% true. And Will, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure we'll have you back on again. But as for now, we'll let you continue cooking, as they've been saying on the internet. Yeah. So
enjoy that birthday party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thanks, Will. There you go.
All right, happy holidays.
Same to you. There he goes. General Manager Mr. Will Kuntz, everybody. Congratulations. There we go. So, by the way, general manager for the LA Galaxy comes on preseason, talks to us for like 30-something minutes about the LA Galaxy.
Was supposed to be on, we told him 10 to 15. Actually,
I told him 15 to 20. So, but okay, I also...
Yeah. I was not involved in the negotiations.
If he was going to tell me if it was going too long, I figured we were sorted there. So, first of all, everybody in the comments, calm down. Good Lord, you guys act like I never done an interview before. Geez, this is why I like doing the interview with Robbie Keane in the referee's locker room. There wasn't anybody there telling me what questions to ask. I'm usually okay. Kevin will work on, but me, I'm okay. So, but no, I hope you appreciated sort of the candor. I'm not sure you get that with a lot of MLS executives. I can tell you with my time with the LA Galaxy, it's not common. I think Dennis DeClosa was the last one who even approached that, but I'm not sure that maybe it was the different sort of European ways that Dennis DeClosa had that was sort of a little bit more. It seemed like more distant, but with Will, it's familiar, and I hope he's. I hope you got all that. I mean, there's basically all the rumors out there either got confirmed or smashed if you were paying attention. Certainly the Miki, is it Miki? Miki. I think it's Miki. Miki Yamane. Seems like it has some real heat to it. And Tyler Boyd. You got your update on Tyler Boyd, which is good. By the way, I have a whole list of questions over here. So everybody going, ask about Tyler Boyd. Ask about Tyler. It was in my list of questions the whole time. So hopefully we got you some answers there. And just an interesting guy. The way that he's going to go about this, Kevin, it has to be weird though, right? He was reporting to his boss, who was Greg Vanney, and now his boss is reporting to him. And like, I'd love to get Greg Vanney on and him being candid, and he'd be like, maybe he's, thank God somebody is here to take away all of this stuff all I have to do is focus on coaching the team. Maybe he's that. Or maybe he's like, I have to report to this guy that I recruited over because he was a good guy. I don't know. It feels like there should be some conflict, and if not, then there's way more mature people than me.
What I've always heard from Will is that whether he was below or above Greg on the the diagram, office diagram, that he felt they had a very collegial working relationship, and they worked together. There wasn't this way we're going to do it. But one thing the Galaxy have needed for a long time, and you go back to Ziggy Schmidt days and Kurt Onalfo days, since Bruce left, is there was no place where the buck ever stopped. It didn't seem. Greg Vanney got some of that done, but there wasn't one person making the final decision. And I think the restructuring of the front office since last May has really helped in that. I think Will is going to be that guy on the player side, but I think as long as he and Greg have the same vision, that's really not going to be a problem. One thing that's always come across with Will, but I hope the listeners got to pick up on this too. Extremely, extremely, extremely intelligent guy. Knows what he's talking about.
So like, I'm a rules nerd, but that dude's a rules nerd. Like,
he wrote a lot of the rules.
He did. So he wrote a lot of. He gets some of those. Yes. But
he's extremely intelligent, extremely well spoken. Those are a lot of times two mutually exclusive things. You know things, but you can't express them. Will knows it. He can express it. And you heard the way that we did not tell him any of the questions we're going to ask. He didn't prepare, but his answers were like right on the mark. And that's the kind of guy that you want going into discussions with agents and players and other general managers, they're not going to be able to snow him. You know, it comes across very clearly that he knows what he's talking about. He knows the history. I mean, Will's a pretty young guy. And he hasn't spent his whole life in soccer or in MLS. And yet here he is throwing out names of former general managers, talking about the history of Colombians in MLS, how many Japanese players are in Europe. You know, if he's sitting down negotiating with you and he throws a couple of those things out, I think your first thought is, I'm not going to be able to snow this guy. We're going to have to do this straight up. Just a super intelligent guy.
Yeah. Logan, by the way, says, does Will have a ghost team that every Galaxy coach always asks for? The ghost teams. I can confirm ghost teams, not only ghost teams, multiple levels, multiple salary ranges. When you need somebody at this range, you go to this ghost team, it's X number of players deep. That stuff has been in development for a while now, and I feel fairly confident in telling you that they have the ghost teams that are there. And then, of course, Feel the Berm always asks, are the ghost teams in the room with us right now? And I responded with, I see dead people. So we have a little. What was it? Was that the sixth sense? Is that what it was, or the fifth sense? How many senses are there? Was it the eighth sense? I can never remember. That movie always. Did you know that he was dead the whole time in that movie, Kevin? Did you pick up that right away, or did you not get it till the end like me?
I got it in the closing credits.
Okay. Did your wife had to explain it to you? Is what
I stuck around for those, I stuck around for the funny outtakes, and that's when I figured it out.
Very good, very good. Well, let's get to some news. Obviously, we're talking about GM, and I think that's a conversation that's going to continue through multiple shows here, and so we'll continue down that road. But there was some other news as well. The LA Galaxy announced the schedule for the Coachella Valley Invitational. In fact, the full schedule of everything that was going on there. And so I want to tell you, this time there's 4 games I think there were 3 games last year. There's 4 games for the LA Galaxy against Charlotte on the 7th of February. The 11th of February, it's Austin FC. The 14th of February, it's against New York City FC. And then the 17th of February is New York Red Bulls. Good news is there are 2 different weekends that you can go to the Coachella Valley Invitational, and you can go there to watch the LA Galaxy play. This is something I'm going to tell you. If you listen to my voice, they did not pay me to say this. I've just been there now multiple times, and I'm telling you, do not miss this. Get your tickets. As a matter of fact, if you'd like to spend the money on the VIP tickets, because the interactions you're going to get with the players is very much reminiscent of spring training, Kevin, if you've been around it, which is you're closer, there's less people, it's more intimate. These guys are happy to be back in training and all that fun stuff. So you get an interaction that you're not going to get on any other time. So as I've said, they're not paying me to say this, although if they did pay me, I would still say the same thing, which probably means they're not going to pay me, is basically that this is an excellent tournament. The amount of teams that are there this year have increased. The amount of games that we'll be playing have increased. So please get out there, because I think it's a really fun time. Yes.
Interesting thing on that schedule, only one Western Conference team, which I think is smart, by the way. You're going to play those guys during the season. You don't want them to see too much of you, and the other teams don't want you to see too much of them. So obviously that was smart scheduling. By the way, a couple other calendar items in case you didn't already have this. December 20th is when the full season schedules are supposed to be released by MLS, and training camp apparently will open in mid-January. And apparently they're looking to, this hasn't been announced yet, obviously will be on December 20th, probably late February regular season start.
I mean,
as it was last year.
Yeah, I was going to say it sort of figures. But
it really didn't start here until March because of the rain out. Remember the opening game at the Rose Bowl rained out. By the way, looks like another Rose Bowl game. Looks like another, this is what I'm hearing, we'll know on the 20th, another Rose Bowl game. And it looks like this will be another Galaxy game. If you remember when this thing happened, the schedule was going to be until San Diego comes into the league in 2025, there was going to be this unbalanced schedule, and LAFC and the Galaxy were going to play each other 3 times. The first time was last year, and they said, okay, the third game, we're going to take it to a different venue. You know, the one at home, one on the road at BMO, and then one stray game somewhere. And they said the Rose Bowl. Well, LAFC was supposed to get it next year, and they were talking about taking it to the Coliseum or maybe SoFi.
Right.
I'm hearing that game will go back to the Rose Bowl, and that's because 82,000 people showed up last year or this season. Showed up this year for that game, and so they want to take it back again, and they think they can do better than 82,000. We'll know that for sure on December 20th, but that's what I'm hearing.
Have you heard anything? And I haven't. So, and I actually haven't asked either. I should probably ask. Are we thinking Miami at Dignity Health Sports Park with Messi?
That I don't know. He did not come here. He did come to BMO. He didn't come here last year. I think the Galaxy went to Miami, right?
I believe they did. I can't remember though. It's a long ways off. They have played them in recent years in Miami, so it would figure that sort of Miami might be headed out in this direction. So,
however,
yes.
When we talk about Commissioner Garber's State of the League address,
let's talk about that, please. Okay. Transition.
Well, what I was going to say is they are not going to break for Copa America. Copa America, as you know, coming 16 teams, 10 South American teams 10 South American teams, 6 CONCACAF teams will play a month-long tournament in the summer, June, July. MLS will not break for that. So that means Messi, who plays for Argentina, will likely be gone for the entire tournament, gone for training camp before that, gone for rest after that. So he'll miss 6 weeks. So if that game with Inter Miami is in Carson during Copa America, Messi won't be here.
Okay. Well, I mean, we shall see. Right. Talk about this though. There was big news. One is that we've been telling you for a while. I always like to take victory laps. Eric reminded me, the Hammer, which I need to do a Thursday show here eventually. I just haven't, and I'm not going to do it this week. Is that he reminded me that we have a little victory lap to take, and one of our victory laps is we were saying whenever Will Kuntz came over, it seems almost like he should be general manager eventually, and then that was said on this show.
Not a hard call.
Not a hard call, but hey, Kevin, you know, if they groove the fastball, 3-1, okay, and you were swinging with a green light and you hit it over the fence, you trot around the bases all the same. Whether or not you had to dig a curveball out next time to launch one over the fence, the fastball comes in, they groove it, you hit it, take your victory lap around, it still counts. But we were also talking about fourth designated player, and Don Garber had some stuff to say about the fourth designated player.
Yeah. No fourth designated player. And in fact, one of the things a lot of coaches, Steve Cherundolo is at the top of this list. His team played 53 games in 42 weeks this year, and he has a right to complain about roster building here in MLS and size of rosters and monies. Steve Cherundolo said, we cannot continue to play this long of a schedule with the roster the way it is. Something has to give. There has to be another DP. There has to be more spending for the middle of the roster, more allocation money, larger rosters, whatever it is. And that led to a lot of speculation that I bought into, by the way, as did others, that there would be a fourth designated player and probably some other roster moves. Don Garber said definitively there will be no fourth designated player.
Correct.
And that's what you and a lot of other people had been speculating. Will Kuntz actually told me about 2 months ago, tried to wave me off of this fourth designated player. And I've got used to Galaxy front office people, not exactly being straightforward with it. I have to get used to Will.
You drove right through that stop sign and got the ticket. That's what happened. You didn't stop.
So Will was trying to tell me, but I didn't listen. So anyway, no fourth designated player. Commissioner Garber did say that there will be some exciting news coming out of the board and governors meeting on Wednesday regarding roster building. I don't really think it's going to be I think it's going to be very nuanced.
It's going to be U22 stuff. That's been my guess. I think that they're going to spin that off. I think they go ahead.
Some people were even suggesting it's even less than that. It could be more like MLS Next stuff. It could be some of the salary structure for the guys, after the 1 through 20 roster spots. It could be something like another Adidas generation Adidas thing. It could be some minutia, and I'm believing, after I screwed up the fourth DP, I'm kind of believing this. And the reason I believe that is because if it was actually something that Don Garber thought was big, he would have touted it in his speech, because he really didn't have. There was a lot of stuff he talked about, but it was all last year's stuff. It was like Messi came to our league. Messi made our league famous around the world. He talked about he and Apple, MLS and Apple both said that the Apple deal, which was 10 years, $2.5 billion, it exceeded expectations for both Apple and MLS. A number of Inter Miami games drew more than 1 million viewers.
Right.
He talked about that, but he made a point of saying, trying to tramp down expectations about what might go on with the rosters. I thought maybe there'd be more allocation money as well. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen. There will be some announcements coming out Wednesday from the Board of Governors meeting in New York. I don't expect them to be earth-changing. I think people like Steve Cherundolo are going to be disappointed. And here's the deal: that when you look at that Apple deal, so it's $2.5 billion for 10 years, or $250 million a season. There are 29 teams in the league. The league is going to take its cut of that. But if you divide that money evenly, it's $8.62 million for each team.
Right.
That's more than they're allowed to spend on the salary cap now. They have some money to spend on allocation money. They have some money to spend on another DP or U22 initiative. They have money to spend to build these rosters out. And they're going to need to do that if they're going to continue to play 50 games a year. So I was a little disappointed that MLS didn't do a little bit more. Again, Garber talked about attendance, a record, almost 12 million when you count the playoffs. Again, the TV money, the viewership is high. Eyeballs all over the world because of Messi. This is a chance for MLS to do something and try to make the league a little bit better and build those rosters out and share. The money came into the league because of the players.
Right.
And I think you need to share that money with the players.
Right. Well, there is some revenue sharing in the current CBA, if I remember correctly, and it's convoluted, but it's there. It's not as convoluted as Ohtani deferring $680 million of a $700 million deal until the final.
You know what?
Years.
I went and told my wife when I read that we got to start a GoFundMe page for this guy. How is he going to get by on $2 million a year?
That's
plus the $50 million he makes in sponsorships in Japan.
I was going to say,
how can you expect a guy to live on $2 million a year?
Can the LA Galaxy get into this deferred salary? Who can they, can they get Neymar and just defer that salary for the next 20 years or something like that? I just want to know how it's supposed to work. No, interesting stuff. Again, my at least in my conversations, I think there is at least some momentum behind doing something with the U22s. Currently, in order to have 3 U22s, you can have 2 senior DPs, but you either need to have a young designated player, or you need to have somebody who's like tammable, sort of a Ricky Puig. Now, I expect that Ricky Puig's contract with his performance incentives and everything to go up to close to $3 million this year. So he's going to be a full designated player, right? And the Galaxy have 2 designated player spots. What we're hearing is, wingers are sort of the focus here. And I think that the Galaxy and Will Kuntz, are sort of seem to be behind Dejan Joveljic as possibly that starter with, 2 DP wingers. But that also throws into the Diego Fagundes and Tyler Boyd are no longer starters in that particular case. Or you have a DP winger who can also play striker. And so you can sort of rotate in and out of all these different spots. That seems to be the way it's going. But if you're going to keep all 3 U22s, then under current rules, you need a young designated player or tammable DP, and that's not going to be Ricky. So that means you're going out to get 1 full senior DP and then possibly a young designated player. If those rules get changed, which is, I think, the hope, certainly for some people, is that they're going to uncouple the 3 U22s from the designated players and basically say, you get 3 U22s, you get to buy it. They're just there. You can have them. If you want 3 U22s, go out and sign 3 U22s. And remember, the big deal with the U22s are that it's unlimited acquisition costs. So you can go out, spend a lot of money on a transfer fee, and that does not hit the salary cap. And the salary cap is held under, to I think $150,000 or $250,000. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it's basically held to $150,000 or $250,000 regardless of the salary. The salary just has to be under, I think, the TAM limit is sort of what those are. It might even be the full budget charge, which is the $650,000 that's in there. So if you uncouple that opens up a lot of freedom for somebody like the LA Galaxy, who no longer have to worry about going out and getting a young DP in order to keep the 3 U22s. It gives flexibility, and I think that's enough flexibility that people are sort of like, well, then I'll go out and get 3 U22s now, which would help in roster building and everything else, right?
Well, that's what the league wants. That's where the league's going, and that's probably a lot of the thinking behind not giving the 4th DP. And as you said, probably expanding the U22 program, the idea of getting teams away. Although Don Garber is touting Inter Miami going out and getting a 36-year-old Argentine, what they really want to do is have you get the younger players, the U22 players, the exciting players that are going to make the league better. I think one thing with the competitions that are continue to grow with the Mexican League, with Liga MX, it's Leagues Cup, the CONCACAF Champions Cup, now it's been renamed. Some of the other tournaments, Campeones Cup, with the Mexican teams is, you look at the Mexican teams and at the top level, USDPs and the top players on Liga MX teams are pretty equal. It's sort of a standoff. The DPs here and the best players there are about equal. It's when those teams start looking at the middle of their lineup, or when they start going to the bench. The Mexican league is deeper. It just is. The spending is there. The teams are deeper. So when you're looking at the 9th or 10th player in your starting lineup, or certainly the first 3 or 4 guys you bring up the bench, the Liga MX players are always better. And that's why Liga MX wins all those competitions.
Right.
If MLS wants to continue to get its hat handed to it every year, fine. Just let's keep it the same. But if they want to compete, they're going to have to build out the bottom of that roster, not the DPs. Those guys are fine.
Right.
It's the 13th, 14th, 15th player on the team where they fall behind Liga MX. And I think the more they play with Mexico, I think the more momentum is going to build to come up with some mechanism to build out the middle of that roster.
Yeah, and that's sort of where the focus is. Just to go back to the rumor, and the rumor tracker is up on Corner of the Galaxy, by the way. It is up. It is functioning. You will find the Miki Yamane rumor on there, 29-year-old right back from Kawasaki, currently at 4 stars, and certainly talking with Will Kuntz today.
What does that say right there?
It's I have no idea. No, it's I guess I can hit translate though, and it'll bring it up. But I figured I'd just show the original rumor that I saw there. But basically, sources indicate that, as Will Kuntz said tonight, that there's some fire there. So we'll see if that ends up getting across the line. But currently at 4 stars, this is a guy who has played on the national team, has 16 caps. Hasn't played, I think, since 2022 though, so a little bit on there. He's 29 years old, right back. If you're looking at the LA Galaxy and Caligari, and certainly the Caligari discussion could go on with Will Kuntz. Like if you wanted to bring him back on the show right now, we could talk about Caligari for the next 20 or 30 minutes, I'm sure. But with Caligari gone, with Leerdam gone, the LA Galaxy have no right back. Raheem Edwards goes. The Galaxy are left with Aude right now, and Cuevas, I believe, is the only outside backs for the LA Galaxy. So this is a position of need for the LA Galaxy, 29-year-old. If you look at his injury history, it says none, by the way. So you're looking at the player profile that the LA Galaxy have gone after. This is somebody who can come in, fill a need, fill a role, seems like a very solid player. You look at that 234 games basically in across a couple different levels of the Japanese league since 2016, 14 total goals, 28 assists. He seems like a solid defender from the highlights that I've watched. So the LA Galaxy have targeted this profile. A guy who plays consistently. I think they've played out of 34 games. He played in 33, and I think one of those they didn't play in was like a lower level game or something like that, where it was like one of the cup games that he didn't play in. So this is real. The rumor tracker calls it as real. This is your first real rumor of the 2024 season, and you can track that on cornerthegalaxy.com. Kevin, let's talk about Raheem Edwards, though, because maybe a little bit of surprise, but maybe not a surprise, right? This is not one where I sit there and go, well, I am shocked, right? But I also wasn't shocked about Billy Sharp when you do the math and sort of how that sits. But if you're going to make Dejan Joveljic your starter, then maybe Billy Sharp as a backup might work. And I'm sorry, let's go back to Billy Sharp for a second, Kevin. If you were reading between the lines with what Will was saying, is there a possibility that Billy Sharp can come back to the LA Galaxy, or do you think that ship has sailed?
I think that ship has sailed, but
Okay.
but certainly I will. Again, we talk about how smart he is. He's not closing any doors, especially not on this show.
Yeah.
Because you never know. I mean, it's the first time you say we're not talking to the guy again, we hate him, and then he calls up and says, "Hey, I'll come play for free. My wife wants to live in LA."
Yeah.
What do you do then?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, playing for free isn't allowed in Major League Soccer, so you have to pay him something. But yes, I know what you mean. And I think that, there's to me, it seems like Will was talking about the flexibility that was sort of around, but not knowing really whether or not you're going to be able to bring a guy like him back with the roster flexibility. And so right now, the right thing to do is to waive the option, so not pick it up, because if you pick up the option, you're locked into it, right? So, but anyway, he talks about, and you heard him, he said, that feels like they're pretty hard up against the cap in a lot of ways. This move today, Raheem Edwards going to Montreal for $400,000 in general allocation money. That's 2024 general allocation money. If you add in Raheem's salary, anywhere between $700,000 and $750,000 have been cleared by moving Raheem Edwards. So not only do you get the $400,000 of general allocation money, but you also get to clear the salary. So technically speaking, if you're going like for like, you were going to go out and buy a defender from Japan, and you said, hey, we have to pay him about $700,000. Well, the move for Raheem Edwards just made you be able to pay for a guy like Yamane, right? So the
other side, right?
The other side. Yamane's right back, Raheem's left back, but the LA Galaxy now basically saying, and maybe this is Will Kuntz, again, a question we could have asked if we had more time, was talking about Aude. If you move Raheem Edwards, are you happy that Aude is going to be your starter? That's the question that comes into for this season, right? Is Aude going to be a starter? Are you going to go get a more experienced left back that starts in front of him? I think Aude's biggest downfall this year was sort of his just physical conditioning, and that kid is young. I mean, putting him in all the games, all the minutes, asking him to run up and down, he needs to be smarter with how he runs and when he runs. I think that's a learning process for him. He's still a little raw, but overall, he has all of the attributes that I think you really want from the left back. He has the technical ability. I think he has the defensive ability. It's really about conditioning for him. And I feel like if he can get that down, then you're looking at a guy who very well could start, 30 plus games for the LA Galaxy next year.
One thing that's missing though is Caligari was a much more of a offensive minded outside back than the Galaxy have now.
But he was
either they change the way they play or they go.
He was very good
ahead.
defensively. That's what I was going to say. Caligari unfortunately, he was a perfectly rounded player. You have the guy who was able to get forward and be one of the best defensive players. He was named the Defender of the Year for the LA Galaxy this year.
Yeah, with reason. But another thing about Raheem Edwards, and I don't know how much this figured into it, whether it was just something they threw in the press release because it sounded good. But he's Canadian. He's from Toronto, and they sent him back to Montreal, and they made a point of he is going home, and this is a good thing for him. I never really heard him talk a lot like he was pining for Canada, but maybe it was something that he wanted as well, or at least was open to going back home.
It sounded like that. If you read, Raheem Edwards went out and put a tweet out, and he says, "My G's, I wanted it to be as long as it could go, but unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. I effing loved every second playing for the blue, white, and gold. All the best in the future. Once a G, always a G." Here's the cool thing about Raheem Edwards. I was actually having a discussion with somebody at the LA Galaxy, is that there were certainly technical deficiencies in his play. He would get into positions and then you'd want him to score, and very rarely did he pull those off, but when he did, good Lord, right? And the way he always played against LAFC is something to remember. Watching him chop the guy from Colorado who probably has a family, and seeing him embarrass him and score that worldy sort of a goal that he put in this last season is fun and amazing. The biggest deal, the reason that he will be remembered so positively, is his dedication to the club, his ability to want to talk to fans. And Kevin, you can chime in on this as well. An absolute pleasure and a joy to talk to in terms of from the press. You were always excited that Raheem Edwards was coming in. He was a good get. You wanted to talk to him. He would always give you a perspective maybe that you didn't think about, or he would be always very clear in what he was trying to get his point across. And he had a point and he wanted to share that. Extremely smart, fun guy.
Really good guy to talk to. A lot of times I thought he sometimes was blowing stuff up a little bit, trying to get that, he knew we wanted a quote and he was trying to give it to us, very helpful. But yeah, he wasn't one of those guys that said, we're just trying to put him on one, win one for the team and
right. No,
put my shorts on one leg at a time. No, that was not his style.
No, a ton of fun. He will be missed. But the Galaxy do get a significant little bump there. Now, the trade window opened. Things are going on. I know the Galaxy. Listen, most teams, when you are done, Kevin, should be hard up against the cap. That means you utilize the cap to its fullest extent. You are there. You've reached the end. Thank you very much. The whole deal. You don't want to have $1 million sitting there and then you didn't do anything with it. Although I'm sure there's teams, Colorado, who do that. The looking at where the LA Galaxy are, I still see some big contracts and some big things that sort of stand out to me. And so when you're looking at possible trade guys who come in, you have to wonder, would anybody be willing to take some of these guys? I think of these guys as prime trade bait. Chris Mavinga, a large contract. Mavinga in at almost $452,000, has sort of been hit and miss, has a contract for the season, and this is his last contract year. So Mavinga in there at $450 is one that I would look at. We talked about Martin Cáceres, a guy who we didn't think was coming back, but then signed a new contract at the beginning of the 2023 season. So now through
in secret.
Yeah, in secret. Yeah, well, I mean, just during the whole Chris Klein debacle at the start of the season. So Cáceres, sitting there on about $556,000 and very much feels like a duplicate of Yoshida. And I expect Yoshida to have a very large, leadership role with the LA Galaxy this year. If he's not wearing the armband, I'd be surprised whenever all this starts come preseason and everything else. But with Yoshida and Cáceres, yes, you could play those two together. They feel like duplicates of each other, however, and I wouldn't be surprised if one gets moved and it's not going to be Yoshida, right? It's one of those. It's not going to be Yoshida, so Cáceres very well could be one of those guys. The other one for me, Kevin, would be Jonathan Bond. The LA Galaxy went out and got Novak Mitrovic, right? They got this young goalkeeper. I feel like they're pretty high on him. When you look at his salary, it's not a lot of money, which is probably means that you don't need to move Jonathan Bond if you wanted to. But if you are saying Mitrovic is going to be our goalkeeper of the future, maybe he doesn't start out as the starter this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see him rotate into the starting role there. And then you look at, somebody like Jonathan Bond, who has a contract in, the $525,000 range. That's a possibility for if you move him and you get some, let's say you got $300,000 in general allocation money for somebody like Jonathan Bond. That's $825,000 worth of salary cap room that you just moved around and wiggled. So there's a lot that can be done whenever you have these big contracts that maybe look like duplicates or have there's players that sort of seem like they're already in a backup role, right? You don't want to spend $500,000-$600,000 for your fourth string center back. I know last year the Galaxy went through about 18 center backs, and so it was like, oh well, anybody would help. But
yeah, you dressed out one game, I remember.
Yeah, I did. I feel like it. So those are sort of the things that I would look for this trade window as the trade window's open.
I'd like to know where Cáceres is with his injury rehab.
Yep.
He's an older player. I know he came to the Galaxy because he wanted to get ready for the World Cup in Qatar. He played in that World Cup. It was his fourth for Uruguay. He's not going to another one. He might be a candidate to play in Copa America if he heals. There may be some motivation there, but I'd kind of like to know where he is, because what is his motivation to come back at this point? I mean, $565,000, I guess, is a motivation, but
right.
Might he be a guy that the Galaxy can somehow pay him to go away, or he doesn't come back, or he's not healthy? I mean, I'd just like to know his condition. And when you talk about those trades, remember some of them, a guy like Mavinga, they don't have to, if they want to move him, they could, agree to pick up part of his salary. And so if you move him and you get $250,000 back,
right,
that could be helpful. And the one thing about the Galaxy, and I've been, more critical of them than just about anybody, the front office and ownership and stuff. One thing they do, with the exception of the awful year, Dan Beckerman and AEG has spent money. They have freely spent money. If there's something they want, they will go out. They're not cheap. They will go out and get it. And so the Galaxy do have money to spend. Will Kuntz comes in with a lot of tools in his first year as general manager. He's got 2 DP spots. He's got money to spend and ownership willing to spend it. That's a good position to be in. So, the Galaxy may be a lot of things, but they're cheap is not one of them.
Yeah, one of the questions I had on my list for him was about Vanny and whether Vanny's on the hot seat. I mean, you're talking about a coach 3 out of the last 4 years. He's in his 4th year now, but 2 out of the last 3 years, he's missed the playoffs. He's headed into his 4th season with the LA Galaxy. There's pressure there, and now it was funny. Because I think Eric and I were talking about, like, what are you doing? Is Dan Beckerman going to Will Kuntz and being like, hey, start looking for coaches? Whenever he was underneath Vanny, start looking for the guy that's going to replace you, is, the whole deal. Well, now Kuntz is in that position. So he is in a position to evaluate Greg Vanny. And not only that, but quite honestly, Greg Vanny's future comes with, sort of meeting the expectations that Will Kuntz has as the general manager. He may say it's not weird, but if the Galaxy come out and start sucking at the beginning of this year, Kevin, the pressure will be there for Greg Vanny.
I don't know if I would say a hot seat, but certainly he is on the clock. And here's why. In the first 3 years, he was able to say, look, I had to build this film room. I had to work out the scouting thing. I had to do the academy. I had a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
I did the best I could with the team. Didn't quite make it. Now all those excuses are gone. There's somebody over you. All you need to do, and Will said this in the interview, he had a lot of stuff on his plate. Now all he has to do is coach.
Right.
So there's no excuses now. So in that way, I don't know if that's a hot seat, but certainly some of the things that have happened in the first 3 years, and he's in the last year of his contract as well. Certainly some of the things that happened in the first 3 years will not be so easily excused or accepted this year.
Yeah. By the way, Gary says that his order from Jimmy John's is ready for pickup, so we probably have to wrap this thing up. So I agree with that. Also, great sandwich choice. I respect that. Kevin, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we leave? I think we got a lot covered. I think we're good for the next week. So no show on Thursday. We'll be back again on Monday, still in the off-season schedule because my wife likes me whenever I don't do shows on Thursday night. We will force that back into position correctly here as the new year starts. So don't worry. We'll get back to 2 shows a week. But anything else?
We should do a show we should set this up soon from Coachella. I want to go out one weekend. You want to go out?
I would love to. I was talking with somebody from the LA Galaxy today, and I thought about mentioning that, and then we were busy.
Here's my idea, and I think you talked about this. I think I'm ripping this off from you. Do it in the lobby of the team hotel, and maybe have the Galaxy. here comes Jonathan Bond and sit down and talk to us for a little bit.
Why don't they just rent us a ballroom in the hotel, and then we could have it? We could have fans come in. They could just run people through there, right? The whole deal. By the way, I would like to take this time, because Will was talking about stuff that was going on in the stadium and stuff like that. That sounds like a marketing thing to me. So, Will Misselbrook, you are now hereby on the clock, and we expect you to come on the show here in the next couple weeks and talk about all the fun things we can expect at the stadium. So that's also on the plan for this preseason.
There's a lot of Wills at the Galaxy.
There is.
When you go to the office, say, "Hey, Will,"
right?
A bunch of people stand.
They
up.
all stand up out of their cubicles. Yeah. Huh?
Well, Kevin Acevedo is listening to this show, as we know.
He's not listening tonight live. He's going to listen in the morning. I talked to him today.
No, he listens while he's training for the Tour de France on his 20-mile bike ride every day. So Kevin Acevedo, we've asked for a place at the team hotel,
right,
where we would bring fans, or a hotel. You can set it up wherever you want, and if you don't want fans at the team hotel. And we'll bring the fans, and we'll bring our recording equipment. You just give us a place, and maybe some players could wander by, just coincidentally, and we'll have a third chair. They could sit down and talk.
We'll even have microphones. I'll put on a headset. It'll be very fancy. We will get all dolled up for it. I have my own PA system, but if the hotel ballroom has one, I say
maybe we'll have Will Squared. Will Squared can come by too.
We could have them both. I'll bring 4 mics. We can have them on either side. We'll just toss out, questions at will. That will be the segment. Questions at will.
Where there are wills, there's a way.
They're absolutely 100%. All right. I think that does it for us tonight. Exciting show. I want to thank the LA Galaxy and certainly Will Kuntz for coming on. Always enlightening to talk to somebody at that level and to clear up all the rumors. And plus, I get tired of shooting down all the rumors, so I'm glad he could shoot down some.
Next week, Phil Anschutz will be here.
Uncle Phil. Yeah, I mean, he's technically a white whale that we're never getting, but it would be fun. I mean, I like to think we're the biggest thing. I'll tell you right now, I don't believe there are any other team-focused podcasts that do 2 live shows a week. I think we're the only crazy ones who do that. So I believe we're giving more content than most, team-focused podcasts do, probably because they have lives and their wives like them. So that's a possibility for sure. So, yeah, that's it. No show on Thursday. We'll be back on Monday. I'm sure there'll be lots of news that sort of spatters through this week. If we need to do an emergency one, I will see. But this isn't going to work for me. Here's my plug before we go. This weekend, the 16th and 17th of December, at the Train Club, we do have Santa and Mrs. Claus. I'm telling you this to my listeners. We're in Costa Mesa.
Real ones.
Yeah,
the real ones.
The real ones. We got the real ones. Yeah,
Pole.
that's right. They're at the North Pole. We are open from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. I would suggest that there's probably going to be a 30-minute wait at least in order to get on the train, so you come with a little patience. But we take you from Costa Mesa to the North Pole and then the North Pole back, and we can do that all in the span of about 20 minutes. So we're pretty talented with what we do. I'd love to see you out there. Obviously, it's a big fundraising time for us as well. So everything's free, but we always ask for donations. So if you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter. But please, if you want to, bring the kiddos out. I'll be working the North Pole, so you will get to see me whenever you arrive in the North Pole. I'll be wearing the parka and the hat and the gloves because it's cold in the North Pole. And so we'd love to see you there. So
maybe Raheem Edwards will be there.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
He's on his way.
He's getting closer. Certainly getting closer. All right. Again, in Costa Mesa at Fairview Park, ocmetrains.org. ocmetrains.org is the website, and all the information is there. All right. Kevin, you good? We're good.
I'm good.
Okay. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, you can find him at kbaxter11. Head on over to LA Times for all the soccer coverage. That's where you can find it. Again, at kbaxter11 at latimes.com. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at jguesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com. Rumor Tracker is up. It is live. We will update it throughout this season. It's one of my most favorite things to do as well. All right. No show on Thursday, back on Monday. We hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Come visit me at the Train Club. Hope to see you there very, very soon. All right. For Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. Big shout out to Mr. Will Kuntz as well. Thank you for joining us here on our little corner of the galaxy from the box. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.